The heavy wooden door of the old bookshop swings inward beneath Luca's hand, slow and deliberate, releasing a breath of warm air that carries the unmistakable scent of aged paper and old leather bindings. It is the kind of smell that belongs to no single book, but to all of them together. A deep, earthy richness that has been building in these walls for decades, perhaps longer. Luca steps inside, and the door closes behind her with a soft weighted thud, sealing out the rain and the cool night air in a single quiet moment. Outside, the rain has settled into a steady, unhurried rhythm. It taps against the tall front windows in gentle, irregular patterns. Not a storm in the harsh sense, but something softer, something almost conversational. Each drop finds the glass and trails downward, joining others, branching and merging in slow wandering path. The sound of it fills the shop in a low, continuous murmur, the way a river fills a valley, not loudly, but completely. Luca stands just inside the entrance for a moment, letting her eyes adjust. The shop is lit by a handful of antique lamps positioned along the shelves and in the corners of the room. Their light is amber and warm, the kind of light that does not reach far, but makes everything it touches feel close and safe. Long shadows stretch between the rows of shelves, soft-edged and stiff. The ceiling disappears into a comfortable dimness overhead, and the wooden floor underfoot carries the faint sheen of age. Worn smooth in the paths that countless visitors have traced before her. Her coat is still faintly bent at the shoulders, and the warmth of the room presses gently against her skin as she walks. The air is dry and still, carrying that same layered scent, paper and leather, and beneath those, something fainter, like dust and cedar and the ghost of old candle smoke. It is a smell that does not demand attention, but rewards it. As Luca moves along the first row of shelves, her fingers trail lightly across the spines of the books. They are all different. Cloth and leather and paper, some smooth, some cracked and soft with age. Some spines are gilded, their lettering still catching the lamplight in faint flickers of gold. Others are plain and dark, their titles worn to near invisibility, their stories held quietly inside. Luca does not stop to read any of them. She simply lets her fingertips move from one to the next, the way one might trail a hand along a stone wall while walking, not looking for anything, simply feeling the texture of the world. The shelves themselves are tall and made of dark wood, their surfaces nicked and scratched in the ways that only come from long use. Some shelves bow slightly under the weight of their contents, a gentle curve that speaks of years rather than carelessness. Small objects are tucked here and there among the books, a brass paperweight shaped like an owl, a folded map, a small glass bottle containing something too faded to identify. These things have the quality of objects that have been in the same place for so long they have become part of the architecture, as fixed and unremarkable as the walls themselves. Near the front of the shop, close to the tall windows, there is a small wooden table with 2 chairs. Luca makes her way toward it, her footsteps quiet on the worn floor. She pulls out the nearer chair. It scrapes softly against the wood and settles into it, resting her hands on the table's surface, which is smooth and cool beneath her palms. From here, the window fills most of her view.
The glass is old and slightly uneven, and the streetlights outside are refracted through it into soft, wavering shapes. The rain continues its slow work against the pane, each drop catching the light for a moment before joining the slow downward drift. The world beyond the glass is blurred and softened. Buildings and lamplight dissolved into gentle smears of color, orange and gray and the deep blue of a rainy night. On the wall, to Luca's left, an old clock ticks with a measured, unhurried steadiness. Its pendulum moves in a slow arc, back and forth, back and forth, each swing carrying the same quiet certainty as the last. The sound of it weaves into the sound of the rain, and together they form something that is less like two sounds and more like one continuous, gentle presence. Luca rests her chin lightly in one hand and watches the rain trace its slow pass down the glass. Around her, the books stand in their rows, thousands of them, each one holding its own world, inside its own voices, its own weather, its own particular quality of silence. And the warmth and the amber light, with the rain speaking softly against the windows and the clock marking the slow passage of the night, those worlds feel very close. Not demanding, not calling out, simply present, the way old things are present, quietly, without effort, as if they have always been here and always will be. Luca's gaze drifts from the window to the shelves and then back again. The lamplight shifts almost imperceptibly as a draught moves through some unseen gap in the old building. A slow, barely their breath of the shop itself. The shadows along the far wall deepen slightly and then settle past the first rows of shelves and into the quieter reaches beyond. There are corners that the lamplight has not yet touched. Luca can just make out the shapes of more shelves, more spines, more darkness gathered softly between the books. The shop extends further than it first appeared, folding back on itself in the way that old buildings sometimes do, as though it has been quietly adding rooms to itself over the years, accumulating space the way it accumulates stories. For now, Luca remains at the table, her hands resting still, the rain continuing its patient conversation with the glass. The clock ticks, the lamplight holds. The scent of old paper drifts through the warm air in slow, visible currents. And when she is ready, when the warmth of the room has settled fully into her bones and the sound of the rain has become as natural as breathing, she will rise from the chair and move deeper into the shop, toward those quieter corners, toward the shelves that wait in the soft dark beyond the lamplight. And so she rises. Luca pushes back from the table slowly, the chair legs giving one soft murmur against the floor. Then she stands for a moment in the amber light before taking her first step deeper into the shop. The rain continues behind her, still patient, still unhurried, its sound following her like a companion that asks nothing in return. The corner she moves toward is not far, perhaps a dozen steps, but in the warm dimness of the shop, distance behaves differently. Each step carries her past another shelf, another row of spines pressed close together, titles in faded gold and worn ink, some legible and some long since rubbed to shadow. Her footsteps are quiet on the old floorboards, though the boards themselves have something to say. A soft creak here, a low settling groan there. Sounds that rise and fade like small, contented sighs. Ceiling begins to slope as she moves further in. It descends in a long, gradual angle, following the line of some upper floor or staircase above, until the space it creates is something between a room and an alcove, low and close and warm. Low and close and warm, like the inside of a cupped hand. The lamplight from the front of the shop reaches here, only in a diluted form. A soft amber glow that has traveled some distance before arriving, losing its edges along the way. Luca pauses at the entrance to this nook and takes it in. The shelves here are older looking than the ones near the front. Their wood darker, their surfaces less smooth, marked by the particular roughness that comes not from neglect, but from time. The books packed into them are denser, more irregular in size, as though gathered over many years from many different places, each one finding its way here by some slow, circuitous route. Some lean against their neighbors at gentle angles. Others stand perfectly upright, held in place by their own quiet solidity. A few have lost their spines entirely, their pages exposed at the edges, pale, soft as old linen. Then she notices it, the scent. It arrives before she can name it. Something faintly floral and dry, threaded through the deeper smell of paper and wood. Lavender, old lavender. The kind that has been drying for a long time. Its color faded, but its character still present. Still quietly insisting on itself. Luca looks along the nearest shelf until she finds the source. A small cloth sachet, the fabric a washed-out purple, tucked into the narrow gap between two volumes of poetry. It is the sort of thing someone placed there long ago and then forgot, and then the shop absorbed it, the way the shop has absorbed it, everything else, and now it simply belongs. She leans slightly closer, the scent deepens. Lavender, something beneath it, something older, like cedar or dry earth or the inside of a drawer that has been closed for many seasons. The two poetry volumes on either side of the sachet are bound in dark cloth, their spines lettered in silver that has mostly worn away. But it is not those that draw her hand on the shelf just below, half hidden behind a taller volume that leans across it like a door left ajar. There is a book unlike the others. Its cover is leather, a deep, warm brown, the color of good soil after rain, and across its face embossed in gold leaf that has held its luster through all the years, a pattern of leaves and thin curling lines winds from one edge to the other. The design is intricate without being busy, the kind of craftsmanship that was made to be touched, made to be held. Luca reaches for it carefully. It comes free from the shelf with the slight resistance of a book that has not been moved in some time. And then it settles into her hands with a weight that feels right, substantial but not heavy. The weight of something that has been made well and kept well. The leather is cool at first, smooth under her fingers, and then it begins to take on the warmth of her hands. She turns it over slowly. The back cover is plain, unmarked. The leather there a little more worn, a little softer. The spine is stitched in a thread that was once a deep red, and has faded now to something between rust and rose. There is a plush armchair nearby, set into the deepest part of the nook as though it was always meant to be there. So the corner itself grew up around it. The fabric is a deep green, color of old velvet, and in the dim amber light, it seems almost to absorb the glow rather than reflect it, holding it somewhere inside its texture. The arms are rounded and low, worn to a particular softness at the places where hands have rested over the years. Luca moves to it and sits. The cushion receives her with a slow, gentle give, the kind that does not spring back, but simply accommodates, settling around her like something that has been waiting. The fabric is soft against her arms, where she rests them on the sides. And the back of the chair is deep enough that she can lean into it fully, her spine finding the support of it without effort. She holds the leather book in her lap for a moment before opening it. The rain is still audible from here, and the rain is still audible from here, though it has changed slightly with the distance. Softer now, more diffuse, reaching her as a gentle, ambient presence rather than a clear tapping. It fills the air of the nook, the way the lavender scent fills it, evenly, without direction, as though it has always been part of the atmosphere of this particular corner. The pages are cream-colored, thick, with a particular texture of paper that was made to last, slightly rough at the edges, smooth in the middle, each page carrying a faint impression of the printing press that set the letters into it so many years ago. The text is handwritten, she realizes, in a script so careful and even that it first appears to be typeset. The ink is a faded sepia. The ink is a faded sepia, the color of old photographs, and the letters are formed with a patience that feels palpable, each one shaped as though the writer had all the time in the world and chose to use it here. Luca does not read the words exactly. Her eyes move over them the way they might move over a landscape, taking in the shape and rhythm of the lines rather than parsing each phrase, letting the elegant script wash over her like the sound of the rain washes over the glass. There are long passages and short ones, some lines running to the edge of the page and others stopping halfway, leaving a white margin that breathes. She turns a page. The sound it makes is a whisper, a single, soft susurration that rises and then is gone, absorbed immediately by the quiet of a nook. It mixes with the rain and with the distant tick of the clock from the front of the shop, and for a moment, all three sounds exist together in a small, perfect chord before settling back into their separate rhythms. The warmth of the amber light, it all gathers around Luca, now like something physical, like a blanket pulled close on a cold night. The sloping ceiling above her is low enough that it feels sheltering, a canopy of old wood and shadow. A small spider has made a web in the uppermost corner of the nook, and in the dim light, its threads catch the glow in tiny, intermittent points, appearing and disappearing as Luca's eyes move across it. Faint and constant, and the rain continues its long, unhurried conversation with the roof and the windows and the stone of the building. Somewhere in the shop, a board settles with a quiet creak, and then the silence returns, deeper for having been briefly broken. Luca's eyes drift slowly over the script on the open page, and then drift upward toward the middle distance, and then return, and the book rests open in her hands like something content to wait. The past that made this book, the hand that wrote it, the press that bound it, the years that kept it, feels very near in this corner.
very present.
As so time in this part of the shop moves by different rules. Not pressing, not pulling, simply surrounding her the way the warmth surrounds her, the way the rain surrounds the building. Gentle, complete, without demand. Her eyes move over the elegant blinds, and the nook holds her, and the rain holds the night, and somewhere in the deeper quiet of the shop, just beyond the reach of the amber light, the walls carry their own particular stillness. The stillness she has not yet reached, or which is already, somehow, waiting for her. The sound it makes is barely a sound at all. A soft compression of air, a whisper of leather against paper, and then nothing. She holds it closed for a moment, her palm resting flat against the cover, feeling the slight give of the binding beneath her hand, the faint warmth the pages have taken on from her touch. She sets it carefully on the small table beside the chair, its spine facing outward, its title catching the amber light for a moment before she rises. The chair exhales softly as she stands. A quiet creak of old wood and worn fabric returning to its natural shape, and then she hears it. Not quite a sound, not quite a silence. Something in between, a soft, continuous murmur coming from somewhere along the shelves, low and intimate, the way a stream sounds when it runs beneath a covering of moss and stone. Luca tilts her head slightly, the way one does when the ear is trying to locate something the mind has not yet named. She moves toward it slowly. The floorboards beneath her feet are uneven here, worn smooth by decades of footsteps, and they shift and whisper softly under her weight as she walks. A low, familiar sound, like the shop itself acknowledging her movement. She passes a narrow shelf of oversized volumes, their spines broad and dark, their titles lettered in gold. Leaf that has faded to the color of old honey. The murmur grows slightly as she approaches the shelves along the far wall. And then she feels it, a thin thread of cool air, barely perceptible, moving against the warmth of her cheek. It comes from somewhere near the window, from a narrow crack in the frame where the old wood has contracted over many winters, leaving a gap no wider than a finger. The smell arrives before the understanding of it, a deep, green, mineral scent, the particular fragrance of rain-soaked earth meeting cold stone, of water running over roots and gravel and the thick, dark soil beneath the cobblestones outside. It is the smell of the stone distilled to its essence, drawn through that small opening and delivered here into the warmth of the shop, where it mingles with the dust and the old paper and the faint cedar of the shelving. Luca leans in closer to the crack in the window frame. Outside, the rain is visible in the lamplight of the street. A fine, continuous curtain of it, each drop catching the glow for a fraction of a second before disappearing into the dark wet stone below. The glass is fogged near the edges with the difference in temperature, and the world beyond it is soft and indistinct. The shapes of the street reduced to gentle smears of amber and gray. The whisper comes again, and this time, Luca understands what she is hearing. The thin draft from the window crack is moving through the nearest shelves, finding the books whose spines do not sit quite flush, whose covers have warped slightly with age and humidity, and lifting their pages by the smallest fraction, enough to produce that faint, continuous rustle, that soft murmur of paper against paper that sounds in the quiet of the shop almost like breath, almost like voices. If voices could be gentle enough to carry no words at all. Luca straightens and begins to walk slowly along the row of books, moving away from the window and deeper along the shelf. Her right hand rises naturally to the spines as she walks, fingers trailing along them, the way a hand trails in water from the side of a slow-moving boat. The textures vary from book to book, a cloth-bound volume, its weave fine and tightly pressed, cool and slightly rough under her fingertips. Then a leather spine, smooth and supple, with a slight give. When pressed, the kind of leather that has been handled so many times it has taken on a patina as soft as skin. Then a row of smaller paperbacks, their spines creased and soft, their edges slightly furry with age, the paper having loosened its fibers over years of sitting in the ambient moisture of old rooms. Each one is particular. A raised gilt title on a dark green spine catches her nail for a moment, the letters standing up just slightly from the surface, each one a small ridge of gold. A narrow volume bound in something pale and matte, vellum perhaps, or a very fine linen. Its surface almost silky, carrying the faint impression of a stitching beneath it. The rain outside continues its long, unhurried work. It moves in waves she notices not in intensity, but in sound. The way it falls against the different surfaces of the building, producing slightly different tones. The glass of the windows gives it a bright, high quality. The stone of the sill below absorbs it into something lower and softer. The iron drain pipe somewhere along the exterior wall channels it into a steady rhythmic trickle that she can just barely hear. A small lip percussion running beneath everything else. Luca's fingers reach a gap in the shelving where a book has been removed and not replaced, leaving a space perhaps 3 fingers wide. She pauses there, her hand resting in the opening, feeling the slight coolness of the empty air where a volume once stood. The books on either side of the gap lean toward each other very slightly, their spines tilting inward, as though in the years since the absent book was taken, they had been slowly inclining toward one another across the empty space. She moves on. The draught from the window follows her along the shelf, threading through the books, and the whispering of pages continues. That soft, continuous sound barely there, present only because the shelf is quiet enough to hold it. It rises and falls very slightly with the variations in the wind outside, swelling for a moment when a gust moves through the street and then settling again into its steady, intimate murmur. It sounds, Luca thinks, like the shop is remembering, not remembering anything in particular, not recalling a specific moment or a specific voice, but carrying the accumulated presence of all the hands that have moved along these shelves, all the eyes that have read these spines, all the quiet hours that have passed in this room over the many years the building has stood here, taking the rain and the cold, and the particular stillness of late nights. She pauses again, her hand resting lightly on a broad spine near the end of the row. The leather here is very dark, almost black, and it carries a faint smell of its own. Something deeper than the general scent of the shop. Something older, like the smell of a cellar or a church, like stone that has been in shadow for a very long time. The title on the spine is in a language she does not recognize. The letters unfamiliar in their shapes, beautiful in their strangeness. The amber light from the nook behind her reaches this far only faintly, and the shelf ahead of her recedes into a dimness that is not quite dark. A soft, deep shadow, the color of old wood and settled dust. A lamp near the window throws a secondary light across the floor, a pale wash of it, and where the two lights overlap, the floorboards glow. A warm reddish brown, the whisper of the pages moving around her like something slow, companionable. The smell of the earth drifts through the crack in the window frame, clean and cool and faintly sweet. And the pages go on, murmuring in their low, unhurried way. Her fingers move from the dark spine to the one beside it, and then to the next, and she begins to walk again, slowly, without direction, following the row as it continues deeper into the shop. The shelves here are taller, reaching above her head into the shadow, and the books are packed more closely, their spines pressing against one another, a continuous wall of cloth and leather, and faded text stretching away from her into the dimness. The floorboards settle once beneath her feet with a long, low creak, and then are quiet again. The clock from the front of the shop ticks on, distant and patient, marking time in its own steady way, indifferent to the storm and the dark and the hours that have passed since the last customer left and the door was locked. At the far end of the row, the shelving turns a corner, and there, where the two walls of books meet, something catches her eye. Not a light, exactly. Not a sound. A difference in the darkness, a slight unevenness in the wall of shelves. A shadow that does not quite match the pattern of the books around it. Luca's pace slows as she approaches, her fingers still trailing along the spines. The whisper of pages still moving through the air around her. The rain still falling softly against the old glass of the windows. She moves toward the corner, unhurried, curious in the quiet way of someone who has all the time in the world and knows it. The amber light follows her as far as it can, and then the shadow takes over, and she walks slowly into it, her hands still reading the spines, the shop still breathing around her in its low, continuous way.
The shadow at the corner of the shelves is not quite like the other shadows in the shop.
Luca stands very still. At the edge of it, her hand resting on the last spine in the row, and she looks at the place where the two walls of books meet. There is a gap there, not large, not obvious, but present. A seam in the shelving that runs from floor to ceiling. A hairline of deeper darkness, the kind of line that would be invisible in daylight, but that the low amber light of the shop has chosen, in its particular and unhurried way, to reveal. She does not move toward it immediately. She stands where she is and looks at it. The way one might look at something in a dream, with a recognition that does not quite have a name. With a recognition that does not quite have a name. A sense of having seen this before without any clear memory of when. The rain continues outside, steady and soft, its rhythm unchanged. The sound of it moving through the old walls of the building, like a slow tide moving through stone. The whisper of the pages is still there, still moving through the air of the shop in its low, continuous way. It seems slightly different here, at the corner, quieter, more concentrated, as though the sound has gathered itself into this narrow space and settled, the way water settles into the lowest part of a hollow. The general scent of old paper and leather and dust that fills the rest of the room gives way to something else, something cooler and more mineral, like stone that has been closed away from the air for a long time, like the inside of a wall.
The floorboard beneath her foot gives a very soft sound, barely a sound at all. More sensation than a noise. A slight,
give in the wood. A slight give in the wood.
The building acknowledging her weight. She reaches out her hand and touches the edge of the shelving where the seam runs, and she feels it immediately. The faintest unevenness, the place where one section of the bookcase does not quite meet the other, where
Thin column of cooler air moves through the gap and touches her fingertips, not with force, just the weight of her palm, laid flat against the wood. A question rather than a demand. For a moment, nothing happens, and the shop holds its breath around her, the rain falling, the pages whispering, the clock ticking its patient measure somewhere in the distance. And then, with a sound so soft, it is almost nothing. A low wooden exhale. A creak that rises and fades like a single note played on an instrument left untuned. For many years, the section of shelving moves. It swings inward, slowly, following the gentle pressure of her hand, and the gap widens from a seam to a sliver to a narrow opening, and the cooler air comes through it now in a steady, quiet current, carrying with it a scent that is entirely new, clean and dry and faintly sweet, the smell of wood that has been sealed away from moisture for a very long time, the smell of old chests and quiet rooms and things kept carefully in the dark. Beneath it, something else, a trace of candle wax, faint and warm, the ghost of a flame that may have burned here recently, or may have burned here 100 years ago. Luca stands at the threshold and looks in. The opening is narrow, wide enough to step through sideways, wide enough for one person moving, slowly and without hurry. Beyond it is a passageway. The walls close on either side, the ceiling low enough that the darkness above her feels intimate rather than vast. The stone of the walls is visible here. Old stone, pale gray in the dim light. The mortar between the blocks, worn smooth and slightly darker. The surface of the walls uneven in the way of things built by hand a very long time ago. The floor of the passageway is stone as well, flat and cool-looking. The slabs worn to a slight polish at the center, where feet have passed over them, the edges still rough and pale. A faint light comes from somewhere deeper and not bright, not steady, but present. A warm amber flicker, very low, moving in the way that only candlelight moves. That particular slow pulse that is almost like breathing. She steps through. The stone floor meets her feet through the soles of her shoes, cool and solid, and the sound of the shop falls away behind her, the whispering pages, the distant clock, the rain against the windows, all of it muffled now by the stone walls, reduced to a soft and distant presence, like sounds heard from the other side of a heavy door. What remains is the quiet of the passageway itself. A deep, settled quiet, the kind that belongs to spaces that have been enclosed for a very long time. The door swings closed behind her with a sound like a soft exhalation, and the seam of light from the shop disappears, and she is standing in the passageway with only the distant candle and the cool stone around her. The cedar smell is stronger here, and the air is still, not cold, not warm, simply still, the temperature of deep interiors. A place is sheltered from every season. Luca moves forward. Her footsteps on the stone are very quiet. A light, even sound. Each step landing and lifting without urgency. The sound of it moving ahead of her along the narrow walls and returning to her softened and slightly changed. as though the passageway is turning the sound of her own walking into something gentler. The walls are close enough that she could touch both of them at once if she spread her arms. And she lets the fingertips of her right hand trail along the stone as she walks, feeling the slight roughness of it, the coolness, the way the surface changes every few feet, where one block meets the next. The candle flame comes into view as she rounds a slight curve in the passage, a single candle set in a low iron holder on a narrow shelf of stone that projects from the wall at about the height of her waist. The flame is small and steady, burning without wind, its light reaching only a short distance before it gives way to the surrounding dark. It illuminates the stone around it in warm gold and amber, the shadows and the mortar lines deep and precise, the surface of the wall alive with the movement of the flame. Beside the candle, the passage widens slightly into a small alcove, a recess in the stone wall, deep enough to sit in, the back wall smooth and curved, the floor of it level with the passage floor. The alcove is just wide enough for one person, just deep enough to rest against the back wall with the legs extended, a space that feels as though it was made for exactly this, for sitting quietly in the candlelight, for being still. Luca moves to it and sits, lowering herself slowly onto the stone floor of the alcove, her back finding the curved wall behind her. The stone is cool through her clothing, a gentle, even coolness that spreads across her back and shoulders, rounding and quiet. She extends her legs along the floor of the passage, her feet resting on the worn stone, and she settles her hands in her lap and is still. The candle flame burns beside her, very close now, its warmth reaching her face in a faint, soft wave. The shadows it throws on the walls of the passage move in their slow, unhurried dance, long shadows and short ones, the edges of them soft. The shapes they make shifting and reforming without any pattern, without any destination. The cedar scent surrounds her completely now, clean and dry and faintly sweet, and beneath it, the stone itself has a smell, ancient and mineral and cool, like the inside of the earth. From somewhere in the walls, around her, very faint and very far away, she can still hear the rain. It comes through the stone as a murmur, a continuous low sound, barely distinguishable from silence, the way a river sounds when heard from a great distance. Present, steady, without beginning or end, the quiet that has been here since the walls were built, the quiet that belongs to old stone and sealed spaces and the long, patient dark. Luca rests her head back against the curved wall and looks at the candle flame. It moves very slightly, a slow lean to one side. A recovery, another lean, as though it is breathing in its own small way, as though it has its own rhythm, its own unhurried life. The light it casts on the ceiling of the alcove above her is warm and shifting, a soft gold that deepens to amber at the edges, the shadows moving through it like slow water. What? The stone at her back holds its coolness steadily, and the cedar air moves in and out of the alcove in the faintest of currents, and the candle goes on burning, and the rain goes on murmuring through the walls, and the passageway holds all of it, the light and the dark and the scent and the sound in its old, Stone quiet, the way it has held things for a very long time.
She is entirely still now, her hands resting open in her lap, her shoulders settled against the curved wall, her eyes soft on the flame.
The shadows shift and resettle around her. The candle breathes its small breath, and the hidden world of the passageway gathers itself into a deep and particular silence. Not empty, but full. The way a room is full when it has been lived in well. The murmur of the rain in the walls continues, patient and low, and the cedar scent drifts through the still air, and the candlelight moves on the stone, and Luca sits in the alcove with her back against the cool wall, and her hands open, and her eyes on the flame, listening to the quiet hum of the hidden place around her, letting the stillness of it settle over her, like something soft and warm and very old. The alcove holds her gently, the way old places hold the people who find them, without fuss, without ceremony, simply with the quiet fact of their presence. The curved wall at Luca's back is smooth against her shoulders. The stone warm to a kind of softness by time and the slow passage of air through the passage, and she settles more deeply into it, her weight finding its rest against the cool surface. The candle burns on beside her, its flame no larger than a thumbnail, steady and small, and very bright in the surrounding dark. She watches the flame without any particular intention, the way one watches water moving in a stream, not looking for anything, not following any thought, simply present to the small, constant motion of it. It leans very slightly to the left, holds there for a moment, then straightens, then leans again, a rhythm so slow and so gentle it is almost not a rhythm at all, but simply the nature of the thing, the way a flame lives in that continuous, unhurried negotiation with the air around it. The light it throws on the ceiling of the alcove is warm and amber, the color of old honey, the color of late afternoon. In autumn, the shadows that move through it are soft at their edges, not the sharp shadows of a bright light, but the yielding, gradual shadows of candlelight. But the yielding, gradual shadows of candlelight. Shadows that suggest rather than define, that shift and merge and part again without urgency. Luca watches them move across the curved stone. Above her, the patterns they make. Long ovals, wired arcs, the ghost of a shape that almost resembles something before it dissolves back into the general warmth of the light. The cedar scent is still present in the air of the alcove, perhaps even a little deeper here, a little more concentrated, as though the wood that carries it is close. Somewhere in the walls, somewhere in the old structure of the passage itself, it is a clean scent, dry and faintly resinous, with that undertone of sweetness that cedar always carries, and it mingles with the mineral coolness of the stone, and the two together make a smell that is entirely of this place, entirely of this particular hidden world. The rain, which has been present throughout the evening as a companion sound, has softened further now. Through the thickness of the stone walls, it arrives as barely more than a texture in the silence, a low, continuous murmur, the faintest possible suggestion of water falling on the world outside. It no longer has the character of individual drops or the rhythm of a shower. It has become something more elemental than that, more like a quality of the air itself, a gentle, pervasive hum that underlies everything the way a deep note underlies a piece of music, present in the body rather than the ear, felt rather than heard. Luca's hands rest open in her lap, palms upward, fingers slightly curled. The air of the passage moves across them in its faint, slow current, cool and even, and the candle's warmth reaches her face in a soft, intermittent wave. The wave warmth from a fire reaches a person sitting at a comfortable distance, not hot, not sharp, but present and kind. Somewhere in the bookshop above her, very far away, there is the faintest sound, a settling, perhaps, a small movement of wood, contracting in the cool of the late night, the kind of sound old buildings make when they are at rest, when the last of the day's warmth has left the timber and the beams return to their natural quiet. It is not a startling sound. It is a familiar one, the sound of a building that has stood for a long time and knows how to stand. The sound of age and solidity and the deep patience of old things. And the candle goes on burning, and the cedar air drifts through the alcove, and its faint current, and the murmur of the rain persists in the walls, low and continuous and very far away. Luca's eyes move from the flame to the ceiling and back again, and the motion of looking is itself slow, unhurried. The eyes moving away. Eyes move when the body is very still and the mind has grown quiet, not searching, not resting on anything in particular, simply receiving what is there. The stone at her back holds its coolness steadily. It does not grow warmer where her back presses against it, or if it does, the change is so gradual as to be imperceptible. It simply remains cool and smooth and present, a solid thing at her back, the way a good wall is solid, not hard in any unwelcoming sense, but firm, reliable, a surface that has no intention of going anywhere. The candle flame stills for a moment, perfectly upright, perfectly calm, as though the air in the passage has paused. In that moment, the shadows on the walls stop moving, and the alcove holds itself in a complete and particular quiet. The quiet of a held breath. The quiet of a held breath. Except that it is not tense, but simply still. The way a pond is still when the wind has dropped and the surface has had time to settle. Then the flame leans again, very slightly, and the shadows resume their slow drift, and the cedar scent moves through the air. And the rain murmurs on in the walls, and everything continues as it was, only quieter now. Luca's eyelids are heavy, not with the heaviness of effort, not with the heaviness of a long day's tiredness pressing him in, but with a different kind of heaviness. The heaviness of deep ease, of a body that has found exactly the right place, of a mind that has grown too quiet to hold itself awake any longer. The candlelight on the ceiling is very warm. The shadows move through it like slow water, like clouds crossing a pale sky, like the surface of something deep and still. The cedar scent drifts. The rain murmurs in the walls. The flame burns small and steady. The stone is cool and smooth and very old. The candle's light grows softer on the ceiling, the amber of it deepening, the edges of the shadows dissolving into the general warmth of the dark. The rain in the walls is barely a sound now. It is more like the memory of rain, the idea of rain, the knowledge that somewhere beyond the stone The world is still and wet and dark and quiet.